President Lula, you have called this the COP of truth. I could not agree more. And the hard truth is that we have failed to ensure we remain below 1.5 degrees. Science now tells us that a temporary overshoot between the 1.5 limit, starting at the latest in the early 2030s, is inevitable. We need a paradigm shift to limit this overshoot's magnitude and duration and quickly drive it down. Even a temporary average overshoot will have dramatic consequences. It could push ecosystems past irreversible tipping points, expose billions to unlivable conditions, and amplify threats to peace and security. Every fraction of a degree means more hunger, displacement, and loss, especially for those least responsible. This is moral failure and deadly negligence. Yes, the newly submitted nationally determined contributions represent progress, but they still fall short of what is needed. Even if fully implemented, they would put us on a pathway well above 2 degrees of global warming. Meanwhile, the climate crisis is accelerating. Record-breaking wildfires, deadly floods, superstorms, shattering lives, economies, and decades of progress. Last year, emissions reached another record high. And today, as we have seen, the World Meteorological Organization confirmed that the emissions continue to rise this year. Let us be clear, the 1.5 degrees limit is a red line for humanity. It must be kept within reach. And scientists also tell us that this is still possible. If we act now at speed and scale, we can make the overshoot as small, as short, and as safe as possible, and bring temperatures back below 1.5 degrees Celsius before century's end. Small, by peaking global emissions immediately, cutting them deeply this decade, accelerating the phase-out of fossil fuels, slashing methane, and safeguarding forests and oceans, nature's carbon sinks. Short, by reaching global net zero by 2050 and moving swiftly to sustain net negative emissions afterwards. And safe, by drastically increasing investments in adaptation and resilience and delivering early warnings for all by 2027. Excellencies, the United Nations will not give up on the 1.5 degrees goal. Because another truth is evident. We have never been better equipped to fight back. A clean energy revolution has taken hold. Solar and wind are now the cheapest sources of power and the fastest growing sources of electricity in history. Last year, almost all new power capacity came from renewables. The clean energy economy is creating jobs and driving development. It is reshaping geopolitics, delivering energy security and price stability. And it is connecting millions to clean and affordable energy for the first time. The economics have shifted. In 2024, investors poured $2 trillion into clean energy, 800 billion more than fossil fuels. Clean energy is winning in price, performance, and potential, offering the solutions to transform our economies and protect our populations. What is still missing is political courage. Fossil fuels still command vast subsidies, taxpayers' money. Too many corporations are making record profits from climate devastation, with billions spent on lobbying, deceiving the public, and obstructing progress. And too many leaders remain captive to these entrenched interests. Too many countries are starved of the resources to adapt and locked out of the clean energy transition. And too many people are losing hope that their leaders will act. We need to move faster and move together. And this COP must ignite a decade of acceleration and delivery. First, countries must agree on a bold and credible response plan to close the NDC ambition gap to 1.5 degrees. Common but differentiated responsibilities must apply, but that should not be an excuse for any country not to assume its fair share. This means supercharging renewables, electrification and energy efficiency, building modern grids and large-scale storage, halting and reversing deforestation by 2030, cutting methane emissions, and setting near-term 1.5 aligned coal phase-out schedules. I've consistently advocated against more coal plants or fossil fuel exploration and expansion. At COP28 in Dubai, countries committed to transition away from fossil fuels. No more greenwashing, no loopholes. We must turn that committing into action while supporting low and middle income developing countries that are highly dependent on fossil fuels. And we must also dismantle structural barriers and provide the conditions for developing countries to deliver and exceed their NDC commitments.
At a pivotal moment in human history, a moment that demands courage, cooperation and unwavering commitment to our planet's future. A future that belongs not to us, but to our children and grandchildren. I want to first express my profound gratitude to Brazil for welcoming us all to Belém. Over the last week, I've seen firsthand that your global commitment to environmental progress is not new. It's built on decades of bold action, visionary thinking, and shared purpose. From the Rio Earth Summit in 1992 to Brazil rapidly becoming a leader in renewable energy and sustainable agriculture, you have shown the world what climate ambition looks like. Just earlier this week, the vibrant city of Rio de Janeiro hosted the Earthshot Prize, a global initiative I founded to accelerate and spotlight the most innovative solutions to our planet's greatest environmental challenges. Many of these solutions are born in the global south. I want to add my thanks to the gracious hospitality of Mayor Eduardo Pez. The event was not only a celebration of ingenuity and hope, but a powerful reminder of what's possible when we lead with vision and courage. It was inspiring to witness such bold ideas from people all over the world come to life in a place so deeply committed to sustainability. And so as we gather here in Belém, 10 years on from the Paris Agreement, we are reminded of the extraordinary power of nations, communities, and individuals coming together to drive change. Where we unite behind shared purpose, we can scale and accelerate solutions that transcend borders. Solutions that give us hope and fill us with optimism for the future. I have long believed in the power of urgent optimism, the conviction that even in the face of daunting challenges, we have the ingenuity and determination to make a difference, and to do so now. I grew up with my father, the King, talking about the power of nature and the importance of harmony in the natural world, a subject he has championed for over 5 decades. It's a privilege to also represent him here today, as well as everyone else who has championed this cause for so many years. All of us here today understand that we are edging dangerously close to the Earth's critical tipping points, thresholds beyond which the natural systems we depend on may begin to unravel. The melting of polar ice, the loss of the Amazon, the disruption of ocean currents. These are not distant threats. They are fast approaching and will affect every one of us, no matter where we live. Communities around the world are already facing rising seas, extreme heat, wildfires, floods, droughts, and increasing frequency of extreme weather. We saw the disastrous impact of simultaneous floods, fires and droughts in Brazil in 2023. Just this year, I visited the Welsh town of Pontypridd with my wife Catherine, where the community is still recovering from devastating floods. I met families who had lost their homes, their possessions, and their sense of security. One resident told me how the river that once brought life to the town had become a source of fear. Their resilience was deeply moving. It was also a powerful reminder that climate change is not a distant threat. It is affecting lives across the UK and across the world, from small towns to major cities, from coastal communities to inland regions. No corner of the globe will be unaffected. These impacts pose risks to growth, security, and well-being in all countries. But we know that these risks often fall hardest on those who contributed least to the crisis. This demands urgent, coordinated action. We must ask ourselves, what legacy do we wish to leave? Because the impact of all our choices will be felt by us all around the world, in the safety of their homes, the stability of their livelihoods, and the health of the natural world that sustains us all. The road ahead will be tough. We must transform the way we power our lives, produce our goods, move from place to place, and care for our land. But this is not just a challenge. It is a profound opportunity. An opportunity to build cleaner economies, restore nature, and improve the health and well-being of communities everywhere. It is an opportunity to grow our economies, develop new technologies, and create secure and affordable energy systems that are central to our future prosperity and security. Action on climate not only protects future generations, but is a powerful engine to create better jobs and lives today. We need to work together to build resilience from the escalating costs of climate change and become nature positive. This means incentivizing protection and restoration, not destruction. It means recognizing nature's true value, not only in economic terms, but in its ability to sustain life, culture, and community for everyone to enjoy. As we stand together in the heart of the Amazon, a region not only vital to global climate stability, but also home to indigenous communities who have safeguarded these forests for generations, we are reminded that true climate leadership means listening to those who have lived in harmony with nature and empowering them as stewards of the planet's most precious ecosystems. At London Climate Action Week, I convened governments, philanthropists, and indigenous leaders to issue a call to action for land tenure and forest finance pledges to be delivered at COP30 here in Brazil. That call to action continued through New York Climate Week in September and brings us here to Belém, where we must listen to the voices and leadership of indigenous people and local communities who care for half of the world's land and a third of its remaining intact forests. Their territories are vital to climate mitigation and biodiversity preservation. Yet only 11% of this land is legally recognized. Where indigenous people and local communities have secured land rights, deforestation is lower, biodiversity is richer, and carbon is better stored. Yet nearly 800 million hectares of their land remain unrecognized. 10-year security empowers communities to resist harmful projects and pursue sustainable livelihoods. This is not just a moral imperative, it's a practical climate solution to the climate and biodiversity challenges our planet faces. Let us build a future where indigenous people and local communities are recognized as global climate leaders, where their rights are protected, their voices heard, and their knowledge respected as vital to the health of our planet. This week in Rio, I had the privilege of meeting representatives from indigenous people and local communities at events hosted by the Earthshot Prize and the Royal Foundation's United for Wildlife program. Their connection with and tireless efforts to protect nature are nothing short of inspiring. They are not just participants in the climate conversation, they are leading it, and we must stand with them. But it is also important to acknowledge the progress we have made.
Colleagues and friends, 10 years ago, the world came together in Paris, united in our determination to tackle the climate crisis. A consensus that was based on science that is unequivocal. And this unity was not just international, it was there within most of our countries. There was a cross-party consensus in the United Kingdom. The only question was how fast could we go? Today, sadly, that consensus is gone, with some arguing that this isn't the time to act, and saying that tackling climate change could wait. But my question is this: can energy security wait too? Can bill payers wait? Can we win the race for green jobs and investment by going slow? Of course not. Inaction would only deepen these problems, drive prices higher, leave the call of opportunity unanswered, and leave our communities exposed to greater instability, flooding, rising food prices, growing migration flows, and growing threats to national security. Just look at the tragic destruction brought by Hurricane Melissa. Lives lost, homes, livelihoods, entire communities destroyed, islands just trapped in its devastating path. And so we say today to our friends in Jamaica and across the Caribbean, we stand with you. And look, there is a better path for all of us. We can choose to rise to this moment and to recognise that this is not just a problem to be solved, but also an immense opportunity to be seized. So the UK is doubling down on the fight against climate change as an investment in future generations, yes, of course, but also crucially as an investment in improving the lives of working people here and now. Our aim is very simple: to make energy a source not of vulnerability, but of strength, an engine to create thousands of new jobs, bring down household bills, and end, once and for all, our exposure to volatile fossil fuel markets and dictators like Putin who seek to weaponize them. Everything we're doing here is about seizing that opportunity, renewing our nation to deliver for our people. We will bring these opportunities home, not by lowering our ambition here, but by raising it. That's why at COP last year, I announced our world-leading, nationally determined contribution, aligned with delivering the Paris Agreement in full. I urge other leaders to do the same, as the best chance we have of limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. And we're following through on our commitments today. I'm proud to say we're delivering the largest investment of clean energy in British history and the biggest nuclear building programme in a generation to take back control of our energy system and make Britain a clean energy superpower. Already, our clean energy sector is second only to tech in its rate of growth. At COP last year, I announced a £1 billion turbine contract for a wind farm blade factory in Hull. This year, I'm pleased to announce upgrades to the port of East Anglia, which will pre-assemble the turbines using the very same blades made in Hull so they can be loaded out to the offshore wind farm in the North Sea. We've also got new deals in Belfast to support 2 major offshore wind farms in the Irish Sea, and in Manchester, where we're building one of the UK's largest battery sites. And all of this is in addition to the over £50 billion of investment into UK clean energy industries announced since last year, and 800,000 jobs expected by the end of the decade. So from revitalising our coastal communities to firing up our industrial heartlands, our clean energy revolution is powering millions of homes, securing thousands of skilled jobs, and delivering energy security and national renewal. And look, this is how we will win in the new era, by driving forward together. And we want you to join us to amplify our progress at home and around the world. We are already investing in adaptation and mitigation for our long-standing commitments on the international climate finance. And last year, President Lula and I joined forces to launch the Global Clean Power Alliance, together with partners around the world. We're helping developing countries secure investment for energy transition. And now we're going further in unblocking clean energy supply chains too. So let me be clear. To my mind, this is a win-win. The greater our collective ambition, the more progress we make in tackling the climate crisis and the greater opportunities that we create. For example, just for UK businesses, providing goods and services for global net zero transition could be worth £1 trillion by 2030. So look, my message is that the UK is all in, because we know you don't protect jobs and communities by sticking with the status quo. You don't meet a challenge like climate change by standing still. You do it by embracing change, embracing the opportunities, and doing it together. This iconic setting eloquently makes that point. The Amazon rainforest helps to regulate the climate for every person on Earth, and it reminds us that this is a truly collective endeavour. So, as His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales said just a moment ago, let's be inspired by this setting and let's rise to meet this moment together. Thank you very much.
Unique poumon de l'humanité que nous sommes fiers avec la Guyane française de partager avec tant d'autres pays amazoniens. Nous vivons en effet les 10 ans de l'accord de Paris, qui fut un des grands succès.
Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and government, ministers, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, I would first and foremost like to thank Brazil, which is hosting us here in Belém, in the heart of the Amazon, in this unique forest, the lungs of humanity, which we are so proud of, along with French Guiana, and which we strive to share with so many other Amazonian countries. We are indeed celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement, which was one of the great successes of multilateralism. This date has become a milestone. 10 years ago, the world came together to adopt this agreement, which has become a compass for our climate action. 10 years later, it's time to take stock. In 2015, the world was heading towards global warming of around 4 to 5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. Thanks to the Paris Agreement and the mobilization it enabled, to the commitments of all states, but also of businesses, local authorities, and civil society, behaviors have begun to change, decisions have begun to be planned, investments have begun to be made, a new methodology has been deployed, and these estimates now stand at over 2.8 degrees Celsius. This is obviously a significant change, because every tenth of a degree counts. But clearly, this is not enough, and we are not yet, as the Secretary-General reminded us, at the 1.5 degrees Celsius target that we collectively set in Paris 10 years ago. The Paris Agreement also represented a paradigm shift, investing in climate action to stimulate growth and development. This is one of the most powerful achievements of the past decade. Decarbonized energy sources are now the most competitive, the most resilient, and the safest for our future, and Europe is proof of this, having demonstrated in 20 years that it is possible to massively reduce emissions, by nearly 40% in this case, while preserving economic growth. However, as I said, this is not enough, and the projected 2.8 degrees Celsius of warming by the end of the century is not an end point. As COP30 opens, we must therefore reaffirm the spirit that guided the adoption of the Paris Agreement, the choice of multilateralism over isolationism, of science over ideology, and of action over fatalism. These principles illuminate our priorities in Belém, and I would like to highlight four for this COP30. The first, here in Belém, is to redouble our efforts to combat climate change. Beyond the legal obligation, unequivocally underscored by the International Court of Justice in July, this is a moral imperative towards the most vulnerable and future generations. Europe and France are at the forefront of decarbonization and will continue to be so. Our targets for 2012 and then for 2020 have been met. Europe has always delivered and will continue to do so with its new nationally determined contribution, based on scientific advice and the setting of a 90% net emissions reduction target by 2040. This is one of the most ambitious NDCs in the world, as we confirmed just 48 hours ago with a vote by the Europeans. And when Europe makes a commitment, it keeps it. We need all major emitters to commit to this path with us. And this path is clear. It involves the gradual phase-out of fossil fuels, as we reiterated, a commitment enshrined at COP28 in Dubai. All the solutions are there: batteries, energy storage, electric vehicles, decarbonized energy, and alternative fuels for air and maritime transport. Each country must now present its investment roadmap, develop its strategy for phasing out fossil fuels, and attract capital, public and private investment to future-oriented sectors. It is essential to continue our efforts to move away from coal, which is the largest emitter of greenhouse gases. France is working on this, first by closing the last 2 thermal power plants, and this will be fully completed by 2027. None of them are now capable of producing the French electricity mix. By encouraging this through our European strategy, the phase-out of coal by our European partners, who are still dependent on it, but also by supporting the phase-out of coal and the decarbonization of many countries, through the Partnerships for a Just Energy Transition, the famous JETPs, defined at the COP in Glasgow, and to name just a few, those that have been signed with South Africa, Indonesia, Vietnam or Senegal. In the short term, the path forward also involves defining a more binding framework for methane emissions, and I want to emphasize this point. I know that, among others, Prime Minister Mia Mottley has reiterated this. This objective is essential to our fight. Given the significant contribution of methane to these emissions, it is achievable at a lower cost, particularly in the energy sector, through investments that prevent methane leaks. This must be an absolute priority, and we are currently failing to meet this challenge. It is essential that all our stakeholders make these necessary investments and that we forge a new coalition to support this effort. Clearly, all developing countries must have access to abundant and reliable decarbonized energy for their development, and decarbonization efforts must not come at the expense of economic growth. This philosophy, supporting each country in its own strategy, not pitting the fight against inequality against the fight against climate change, and mobilizing more public and private funding through new mechanisms, is at the heart of the Pact for the Prosperity of Peoples and the Planet, launched in 2023, which I will discuss later. The second priority for this COP is to protect and restore our 2 major natural carbon sinks, our forests and our ocean. France has been advocating for years for nature-based solutions that allow us to create a pact for the climate, soils, biodiversity, and ultimately, human security. Nature is above all our insurance for adapting our societies, creating resilient ecosystems, and supporting our farmers, our indigenous peoples, and our communities. This is why France has consistently committed itself to the fight for forests, the ocean, and the preservation of our water resources worldwide. A specific event planned by President Lula this afternoon will allow us to revisit this topic, but I want to emphasize how essential both what we were able to finalize at the UNOC summit in Nice, and what we fought for with many of our Amazonian, African, and Southeast Asian colleagues regarding our forests, are in this fight. And I know that Prince Albert of Monaco has once again emphasized the importance of this fight, which he has been leading for so many years before many others, and I want to thank him for that. In this regard, adaptation policies are essential. Let's be honest, we haven't given them the necessary attention until now. We must, in particular, protect the most vulnerable, and I am thinking of small island states which, year after year, face increasingly intense disasters. France currently dedicates a third of its climate finance to adaptation, amounting to €3 billion in 2024. This represents 8% of the global public contribution to adaptation, out of a total contribution of €7.2 billion, and we will continue to meet this challenge. Thirdly, we know that achieving our goals will require new funding. Let's face reality here too. Public effort cannot rely on a small number of countries that can be counted on the fingers of one hand. All those in a position to do so must assume their responsibility in this regard, and the base of public contributors must be broadened to include all countries that are currently in a position to contribute. We must go further in aligning financial flows, reforming the international financial architecture, and identifying innovative sources of financing. This is precisely the purpose of the Pact for Prosperity, Peoples and Planet, the 4P I mentioned, which brought together 73 states around this key principle of mobilizing more resources, particularly from the IMF, the World Bank, and the largest possible public contributors, but also of further mobilizing private finance through first loss guarantee mechanisms and increased leverage of public finance. We need innovative and equitable financing. The initiatives stemming from the 4P are moving in this direction, with Kenya, Spain, Somalia, Benin, Sierra Leone, and Antigua and Barbuda. We have made significant progress toward a better contribution from the aviation sector to adaptation. Together with the United Kingdom, we have worked to establish a framework for biodiversity credits, and we will continue to move forward in developing financing tools for the transition, such as climate debt swaps. All these mechanisms enhance the private sector's contribution to this effort and are essential. That is why we must also continue our work, first to improve the functioning of carbon credits, which have shown their limitations in recent years, and to develop these biodiversity credits, which are crucial for mobilizing international financing on this issue. Finally, and this is my last point, at a time when doomsayers are sowing doubt about the climate emergency and questioning even the most well-founded certainties, we must protect science and base our policies on these findings. And I want to emphasize this point. Our COPs rely on a collective mobilization that has been fueled by the work of independent international science in space, namely that conducted by the IPCC. Similarly, we have built a new approach to biodiversity action through IPES, and we have based our commitments at the United Nations Ocean Conference on compromise and scientific consensus. Climate disinformation now poses a threat to our democracies, to the Paris Agreement, and therefore to our collective security. That is why, I reiterate here emphatically, we must support free and independent science. We must continue our commitment to our scientists to win this climate battle. It is in this spirit that France will host the IPCC scientists in Paris this December and will help bring together all the countries ready to provide sustained, visible, and robust funding for this scientific work. So, ladies and gentlemen, faced with this urgent situation, I am firmly convinced that moments of heightened crisis must also lead us to achieve decisive progress. We have the opportunity to make COP30 a success with the European Union. France will stand alongside Brazil to meet this challenge. We have just done so with our commitment to forestry. We will continue this work for our forests and our oceans, but we will also continue it beyond the summits, through the consistency of our commitments, the strength of the coalitions of actors we have built, and the power of the conviction we share. It is by the measure of this mobilization that this COP will be judged, and I say this with great confidence and friendship. Thank you.
We are here at the gates of the Amazon forest with high expectations. This must be the COP that keeps 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach. The COP that strengthens our determination to triple renewables and double energy efficiency by 2030. The COP that delivers for those countries that are most vulnerable to the devastating impact of climate change. And the European Union is ready to contribute. Renewables now generate nearly half of our electricity. We're firmly on track to meet our own 2030 target. As my friend Antonio Costa just said, we have our NDC for 2035. The second most ambitious one of major emitters. And yesterday our member states also agreed on a 90% reduction target for 2040. This is in line with the Paris Agreement, so my message is very clear. Europe is staying the course. And we offer our support to our partners to do the same, because the whole world should reap the benefits of the clean transition.